From Nutrien Ag Solutions, I'm Senior Meteorologist Andrew Pritchard with your Canadian Prairie weather story for Tuesday. It is February 20th today, a day late. We got a holiday in the U.S. I'm also traveling today, and my audio sounds a bit different because I left my studio microphone behind. I'm recording on the computer's internal microphone here from the hotel room. Where am I located? I'm much closer to you guys than I normally would be when I'm down at home in central Illinois. Yesterday I flew over to the Pullman, Washington, and Moscow, Idaho region. So kind of right here as I record this video, being impacted by the same storm system that is lofting at least some light precipitation into parts of the prairie. Not certainly what we've been looking for as we try to kind of eliminate the dryness across the region. Now, as I teased a week ago, we continue to see evidence of an uptick in impactful storm systems and a transition back to a colder, more wintry pattern as we head into late February and early March. That all is still very much there, and that's what we'll talk about here in this forecast video. So again, animating this, taking my travel off of the forecast map, watching the satellite animation, you can really see these big coastal lows across the Pacific Ocean that continue to take deep fetches of Pacific moisture from the near the equator and the tropical regions here and deliver a lot of that to parts of the western U.S. California continuing to see several atmospheric river events. You see one right here, even some severe weather in the form of a couple of funnel clouds and tornadoes in California's Central Valley. That is all well south of us, though, across the Canadian Prairie, and that has been the theme for much of the winter. We've seen certainly at times a ramp up in wintry conditions here, but with that very strong subtropical jet stream generally flowing across this region and the lack of the polar jet, all of the activity continues to flow across the southern United States. So we'll look at the radar animation here, looking at the overnight into Tuesday morning, and as I mentioned, some very spotty shower activity, maybe some flurries across parts of the prairie. We do have a bit of a warm frontal boundary right here, much colder to the north, a little more mild off to the south, and that's where we've got some of that shower activity focused here on Tuesday morning. But again, all of the heavier moisture well off to the south from California into parts of the Pacific Northwest. Now here are those temperatures again with the system to the southwest, that warm front kind of dividing the more mild air from the colder air off to the north, where we've got minus teens north of the front, above freezing temperatures south of the front. And as we look at the last 7 days of precipitation, this was well covered in the last forecast video, of course very dry across this region with all of the activity from the Pacific Ocean kind of being funneled in across portions of the western United States. Now, the next 7 days are going to be quite similar. A lot of the same here. A lot of moisture, again, being deposited on parts of California up into the Pacific Northwest. But as we head into week 2, this will be the last days of February into the first days of March. We see a bit of a change here. We start to see actually forecast models predicting above normal precipitation across the prairie proper. Now, the next 5 days, snowfall here, not much in the way of accumulating snow, just some flurry activity associated with those light showers moving in over the next 5 days. But as we add in the last 5 days of February, we start to see that slow uptick. We're certainly you're not seeing a heavy corridor of snow here, but as we flip back and forth, you see this big, dry, mild void in the snow over the next 5 days. And then as we head into days 5 to 10, we start to open the pattern back up. We start to bring some colder air back south, and we start to open the door for some snow across this region. So winter 2023 versus winter 2024 so far. Eric threw these slides in his video that he posted yesterday. I highly recommend checking it out. It, of course, gives a great analysis, an in-depth analysis across all of North America. He pointed these two slides out here, though. This is looking at the jet stream in winter 2023 on the left and then winter 2024 on the right. And really the story here in 2024 has been this big Pacific jet extension and the strong subtropical jet from the southern U.S. across the southeastern United States. And then as we look for the polar jet in this region, you see nearly calm winds. You look at the scale over here, and we're talking about a complete lack of the polar jet stream, which would be our source for cold air and more impactful storms at times across the Canadian prairie. So last year, certainly not the wettest winter season across the prairie, but it was featured a lot more in the way of cold air and a lot more in the way of snow making its way across the region. So that's the difference here in the winter patterns last year into this year. And we'll talk about some of the changes then that we expect to see heading into March. Do we get that Pacific jet stream to come in? Well, here's what we've got now. Again, the subtropical jet is controlling the story. The flow coming around the base of this trough across the Pacific, running in across the southern United States. Makes sense then the active regions are kind of focused right in here. Meanwhile, with high pressure across the central portion of North America, we're mild and rather quiet across much of the Canadian Prairie into the central United States. Here's the jet stream winds that I just drew, kind of following that trough around the base of that. The very strong jet stream winds race in then across the southern United States. I'll draw that in one more time, but basically the same drawing I just drew there. Very calm winds across the Canadian prairies. We talk about the jet stream. And again, as you've watched my videos of the last couple of years, you know if you want interesting weather, you want precipitation, you need the jet stream focused on your area. And it has most certainly not been focused on our area to this point, and it won't be for much of this week either. Now, as we look at what happens, though, getting into the first part of March, the late part of February, early part of March, I'm stumbling over my words here because I thought I threw an animation that showed this transition happening over time. I might have left that one out of here, but I just drew in that strong jet stream that was missing the prairie. Well, this is what we need to see. The polar jet comes to life late February into early March, funneling that flow right back into the prairie. So this is when we can expect to see an uptick in those storm systems. So here it is over the next 7 days, pretty quiet, but there you see the late part of February into early March. We really start to ramp things up across this region. Early on, everything's through here. Last part of the loop, everything is coming up from the Gulf of Alaska, which is what we kind of want for transition back toward a more wintry pattern. Again, what we do here with a pattern like this, if we develop a big trough that's going to be anchored here across western North America, we set a high pressure cell right over the southeast parts of the Atlantic Ocean. The flow around that high comes right over the Gulf. We get storm systems, lee cyclogenesis, east of the Rockies here. And this is what gives us those lifting storm systems that bring much more robust moisture, potentially some corridors of snow on the north side of those storm systems' tracks. So where exactly the storms track, that's going to make all of the difference here. Of course, we don't know who's going to see the most moisture. Certainly some areas could whiff on this, but this is the pattern that we've been waiting to see late February into March, certainly an uptick in precipitation chances during the last part of February into March. It's likely as we talk in our next forecast video next Monday, we may have a much more clear idea of this. We may be starting to see some of the first impacts of that pattern transition making its way in. Temperatures certainly going to be trending colder as we look at the loop here. Mild air holds on for much of this week, but then we start to see some shots of colder air as we get to the weekend, and then a much more cold transition overall late February into early March. Again, with the development of that big trough across western North America, we kind of reinvigorate the polar jet stream. Well, that is going to, again, restore that source of cold air that we've been missing through much of February. So your kind of loose takeaways over the next 10 days, look for a mostly dry finish to this week, not much in the way of impactful snow across the region. Shots of cold air increase in intensity, trending colder overall in early March. Coldest in the west, maybe a little more mild in the east. Again, the storm tracks will have a lot to say about that. And with that, continuing to watch more impactful storm systems in that transition from February to March. So stay tuned. We'll have much more in the way of specifics in next week's video, but know that this continues to be out there as we endure another pretty mild and dry week across the prairie. I do know that things are getting dire there. I certainly don't mean or intend to promise that we're going to, eradicate all of those concerns with this late February into early March pattern transition, but it is certainly much better than keeping it mild and dry, just plowing right through the end of the winter. So maybe this is the first signs of that backloaded winter we've been talking a lot about. Calgary, your next 10 days, again, mild through Sunday, trending much colder as we head into the early part of next week. Edmonton, very similar look here. Saskatoon, Regina, and then as we head over toward Winnipeg, these shots of cold air become a little less impactful as you're a little bit more protected from that a little further east. So Winnipeg, of course, we won't get into the weeds with this right now, but a little more on the mild side, a shot of cold air on Friday, mild for your weekend, and then trending colder overall as we head into next week. Have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll talk to you again at our regularly scheduled time back in my home office in Illinois next Monday.